Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Bright Ideas. I am here today with Matthew Porter. Thank you, Matthew, for being here.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we've had the opportunity to speak very briefly, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat again, more formally, of course. But before we jump into management and leadership, why don't you give everybody who's watching just a little bit of your background, your bio? Who is Matthew?
Oh my, who's Matthew?
Yes.
Such a mystery. Yes. I'm a writer, director, producer, creative executive. I currently serve as executive producer for a nonprofit called Key Life Network. We have radio shows on 250 some odd stations around the country. I own a marketing agency, Hey Porter Media, and have a number of film and television projects in development through my production company. And that's about it. Love story.
Wow,
Love talking leadership.
A jack of one trade, of course.
Yes. The secret is I'm terrible at all of those things. That's how I can do so many different things.
Well, self-awareness is key. I kid, of course. Of course, people are going to hate in the comments or whatever. So how did you get so diversified before we jump into leadership? How did that come about?
You know, the thing that keyed everything off for me was senior year of high school. I took video production class. Had not even really thought about it before, but it's really one of those crossing the Rubicon moments. And just to make it super clear, that was 6th period. 7th period was trig and analyt. And only F I ever got was in that class. It's like I started falling in love with story and video. And you're like, you know what? Everything else just started falling off from that. From that point, I just kind of wanted to say, well, where am I supposed to fit in this very large industry? And I really kept gravitating towards writing and directing and producing, and got to direct a short film with a couple of the actors from Northern Exposure, got to direct a documentary that we shot in Asia and South Africa and in the Caribbean. And then that later transitioned into kind of entering into the advertising and marketing world. And kind of the thread that pulls the whole thing is together is story. So whether it's a story that I make up and tell that's purely fictional, or whether it's, you know, Downy fabric softener and they've got the story to tell about their longer lasting scent or whatever it is, it's still a story. There's a beginning and middle and end. And I love telling stories, and I love bringing out the best possible performances, whether it's from an actor or from a team of creatives.
Wow, it's cool when you're able to find that thread. I think a lot of people, if they're lucky enough to be okay with doing a lot of different things, have a hard time kind of threading that one, string through everything. Killed that metaphor, but it's really tough sometimes, and a lot of times you see it in hindsight. So from a personal branding perspective, or from your own story, right? If you were to say, oh, well, who is Jessica? Tell me about it. It's very difficult to do. So it's impressive, with your background obviously helping you out, how seamlessly you tell that story.
And you know what? That's a really great point. And I think there's something to be said for looking back and finding what the common thread is. There's a great quote I like, and I'm going to murder it. But basically, if you want to find out what you're about, take action. Action will define and delineate you. As an example, back in 2010, I started my website, heyporter.com. And I sat down like a rational, thoughtful person should, and goes, what should this be about? What should I? And then I finally landed on, I don't know. I'm going to start writing a bunch of stuff. And once I got a bunch of it, I'm going to put it in a pile, and I'm going to say, what are the common elements here?
Right.
That's the way to do it, versus you could stay on the starting line and go, well, what should I do? What am I about? What's my common? Sometimes you've got to kind of just jump into the fray, and you'll figure it out as you go along in process.
Right. I like to say, look, they're not all going to be gems. Whether you jump in feet first and the first couple suck and then you hit your stride, that was going to happen anyway. Even if you planned everything to a T, they were never all going to be diamonds.
Absolutely. Before, I have written a bunch of feature scripts, And if there's one piece of advice to give somebody screenwriting or starting anything, is like, you're going to suck at the beginning for anything. Riding a bike, nobody's a virtuoso, and you should give yourself permission to make those early mistakes, make them quick and make them as painless as possible. But my gosh, go make them. Um,
Right.
I always refer to it as the first pancake. You ever pour the
Ooh,
first pancake and you're like, ooh, and like,
yeah.
a lot of times when I'm starting something, and it doesn't work out, you're like, oh, first pancake. You're like, it's okay. You're not a bad person. You are a person who's bold enough to try something now.
Right. Well, and I always look at it as just word vomit or whatever, vomit it out, puke it out, barf
Yep.
it out, as I like to say, and then become a better editor. Right. So
Yeah.
while you're not great at this, maybe in hindsight you'll be a better editor when it comes time to fix that first pancake.
Absolutely. I have a friend who is a working screenwriter, and she just quoted, and other people have said this, but she's somebody who's qualified to say this. She is writing is rewriting. And
Mm,
that's exactly what you're saying. Now, your thing might be writing, it might be whatever. The point is, you've got to get a first version in order to improve something. The only way something can improve is if you never had the courage to make the first version and in the first place.
right. Well, and it's funny, and I think that's a perfect segue kind of into some of the misconceptions about leadership. I know you're big into leadership. You have some very strong opinions and thoughts, certainly a thought leader in the space. Tell me about some of these misconceptions because you're not born a leader. You may be born with leadership qualities or traits,
Mm-hmm.
but you've never led anything when you're
Yeah.
born, right? So it doesn't just come without anything.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest one that grates on me is the idea of conflating leadership with a position of authority or influence exclusively. There
Mm-hmm.
is overlap, but just because somebody is not a boss or a manager over somebody does not mean they can't be a leader. Um, Secondary to that, I would say, kind of getting what you're kind of touching on, is nobody's born a leader. Meaning, leaders can have all different personality styles, and of course, maybe some of the ones that immediately leap to mind are very charismatic, outgoing, gregarious, big personalities. Yes, absolutely. Those tend to in our society, um, jive well with leadership out front positions. But just because somebody is an introvert or somebody who's shy does not mean they can't be a leader, which goes to the question then the what is a leader? What is a leader? Somebody is who they are, or is it what they do? And I think it's a
Mm.
matter of what you do. So literally, you could be low man on the totem pole, but you can think and act like an owner, and that in itself makes you a leader.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, one of the interesting things that I've seen in my career is natural, for lack of a better word, but people who naturally assume a leadership role in whatever they are, whether they're entry level, whether they're middle management, senior management. Actually, I've seen them be ruined by the authority aspect, right? So they get promoted and then they're expected to do the leadership part and
Mm.
the management side of, no, you can't go to grandma's funeral. I need you in the office till 10 o'clock at night. And it doesn't jive maybe with their leadership style. And what do you choose at that point? Do you pay the bills or do you stay true to yourself? And unfortunately, people have to make that decision more often than not. We'd like to think it doesn't happen, but I think it does happen more. I think it happened to me, to be honest.
Mhm.
In my experience, I have a very specific leadership style. And if your management style doesn't mesh with that or with the companies, you have a problem.
Right, right. Yeah, I think we've all seen situations, experienced situations where somebody is in a leadership position, and in an org chart, they're a leader, but they don't have the attendant skills that are required for
Mm-hmm.
that, as far as listening, leading, serving those. They are leaning on the authority and power that that position has, but they're not bringing to bear what a leader actually does. Conversely, you've got people who are young or new or inexperienced, but my gosh, they show up, they hustle, they're prepared, and that that is the beginnings of leadership, even though they're way down here in the scheme of things. I mean, if you want to be a leader and you've never tried that before, I think it's really as easy as being prepared, being informed, and showing up with a point of view. If you
Mhm.
never did it before, start there and see where that takes you. And sometimes you make a very good point. Sometimes when you step into the leadership, maybe culturally, you kind of discover, I don't think this is a fit. The thing is, if you need to be somewhere else, the best thing that could happen is for you and others go, I don't think I'm a fit here. I don't think so either. I need to go find where I'm valued and
Right.
work. Not to say
Yeah,
that's not stressful.
it's stressful too, true. But I do think, and in this world, thankfully, where mental health is becoming a little bit less of a stigma, I think all of that plays in, right? That self-awareness, that acknowledgement of this isn't right for me. Not that you have to go out in a blaze of glory the second you think about it and you're like, oh my God, this isn't for me. I quit. Like, you can't do that, right?
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with developing your get whatever you can out of where you are as you're looking to make a move, or maybe looking inwardly and saying, this isn't for me, but I love it here otherwise. Maybe I am the one who needs to edit my perspective or my point of view.
That's I love what you just said there. And I think that gets to humility, which is before I, get all self-righteous and all, tweety, let me check myself. Let me check
Right.
myself before I wreck myself. That's probably taught in business schools, right?
I think it's a
Yeah,
class.
yeah, that's a class. But yeah, exactly. Do I need to shift my tack or something or other? Here's another thought. If somebody is in a position that you're like, this is not where I fit. Weird story. It'll circle back shortly. Whenever I travel, and for certain years, it's been a ton of travel for video production and directing and everything. The first thing I ever do when I get into a hotel, sounds goofy. I get the shampoo and the conditioner and the little. I'm not stealing anything, but I bought the room. I want to get everything I can while I'm here. And I think it can be that way in a business, even if you're in a position that's not fitting. You're like, okay, long term, 6 months, 12 months, I don't see myself here. Okay, great. You're actively involved in that process, and that's going to unfold when it unfolds. In the meantime, what can I gather up? What can I
Right.
learn while I'm here? It's not wasted time if you make it not wasted time.
Right.
What skill can I develop? The only way we learn is by bumping up against stuff that you're like, I don't like, that's uncomfortable.
Right.
So you have some hidden opportunities even in that position that's not your dream job. So what can you gather up while you're still there?
Yeah, there's a great book. One of my favorite professional development authors. His name is John Gordon. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's fantastic. But he has a
Writing
book
it down
called,
right now.
yeah, John, no H. He has a book called The Seed. And the whole concept of the seed is that, you plant a seed in this little cup, right? And it takes all the nutrients it can from that little cup and all the water and all the light. But eventually that seed is going to outgrow its little pot, right? Assuming everything goes the right way. But in the meantime, it's going to take exactly what you're saying, take everything, every experience, whatever that it can out of that situation until it goes to a new one. And I love these books. They're short, they're quick reads. But that perfectly illustrates it. That's one of my most recommended books. But I mean, you said the same thing. It's in a little bit different vein with the hotel. You're right. Why is it a stigma to take the soaps? You paid for them, and they're going to go to waste anyway. So I agree. I agree completely. I think one thing that's interesting with leadership is that you mentioned about before you be all self-righteous, right? There's an inherent characteristic, I think, in leadership that is an awareness of where your skills end and where someone else's begin, and the acceptance that there's nothing wrong with that. Some of the best leaders I know were master delegators. They had their vision, they had their experience, but they were not the tactical person. It didn't make sense for them to be, or they just flat out didn't know the craft. I think that's so important because I've been in rooms with leaders who say, oh, I know everything. I can do everything. I don't need anyone. And it's like, show me a leader who needs no one.
Yeah, really well said. Anybody who takes that approach, I think, yeah, I can hear a ticking clock.
Mm-hmm.
Either your position is going to end, your organization is going to end, probably with some human collateral damage in the
Yeah.
process. Nobody knows everything. And if I was ever the smartest one in the room, and I don't think I've ever been the smartest one in the room, I would be worried. I mean, the best asset, the best thing a leader can do is surround themselves with people who are really great at what they do. And if you perceive that as a threat, you need to maybe pause and go, why? Why do I feel like that's a threat? Think it through. You're not a bad person, but
Right.
you are really limiting yourself because um, business moves too fast and things change too quickly for anyone to think that they could be the master of all different things, because this skill set has a whole bunch of different skill sets adjacent to that, and on and on and on. Um, and knowledge is great, but knowing how to capitalize and draw out the best from people um, really is the secret, I believe, to unlocking success.
Yeah, I think everything you just said plays so well together because that acknowledgement, I think, of I don't have all the answers forces you to go find people who do, right? Or and again, not all of them, but I can go to this guy for this little piece of it, right? And accentuate and acknowledge his or her skill in that. And that
Yeah.
shows it to someone else. And it becomes this web. I think leadership is a huge web, right? I think it's showing, kind of helping other people showcase their special traits. I think that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, there's this great quote by Carly Fiorina that I love. She says, the highest calling of leadership is to unlock the potential of others. And I
Mm,
guarantee if you're in a business and the leader is the guy who says, I know everything, everyone around him has also got to have that kind of bulletproof
mm-hmm.
invulnerability that they put forward. And when you create an environment where nobody can be wrong or nobody can make a mistake, you have cut off the possibility of learning and growth
Yeah,
entirely. And that organization ain't going anywhere.
right. Stagnant, dead in the water for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the leader has to, I heard, I think Jordan Peterson talking about this, talking about vulnerability in leaders. And so the interviewer's like, oh, you're talking about showing weakness. And he goes, not so much weakness as much as admitting vulnerability, which is not weak. It's very strong. It's a
Right.
powerful move to say, here's something I'm not good at, or here's something I'm working on. Does that not give permission to all of those around you to go, yeah, I'm growing and learning too. And
Right.
either I'm going to learn how to do this, or I'm going to entrust this task to you, or maybe somewhere in between where we collaborate. That feels like a path forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because one of the reasons why I started this speaker series is a lot of these leaders that we see everywhere, right? Everyone's LinkedIn feed, everywhere on any other social media, I feel like, at least. If you're in the school of thought that you follow these people anyway, or look for this type of content, they all have this bulletproof persona, right? So they come off as having these, because that's kind of their role, right? They're the thought leaders, and that's fair. But I think that vulnerability and that humility that you talked about a little bit earlier allows you to tone the bulletproof down a little bit and connect with your audience, whether it's 10,000 people in an arena or one-to-one with another human being who is, we're all just trying to do the best we can do, right? And I think that humanizing of leadership in general, it really does more than we think it does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of enthusiasm and kind of voracious thing, I just think it needs to be redirected. It's not like, I got this, back up everybody. It's,
Right.
hey, we got this. And maybe I
Hmm.
don't even know exactly how, but I know you and you and you and you and what you guys bring to the table. We're going to figure it out, and we will get this thing done, and we will win. Now that's still that enthusiasm, but
Right.
now it's making those around you also the heroes, and inviting them into the process. And I'm a real big believer in servant leadership, and I think the biggest thing a leader can do is provide vision. And when you take that approach, I mean, again, the that kind of zeal, that kind of just zest for tackling, I think it's super good. But I mean, I really do think it has to be uh, shining the light on those around you, and less about you and more about what you are confident you can accomplish as a team.
Yeah. So let's kind of move on a little bit. Similar vein, obviously. So we've talked about um, the different styles of leadership, right? Or the traits of leaders, and what makes a good one, what makes a bad one. We also talked previously about how leadership is sometimes absent, right? And for all the content that's out there in this content is king world, it's great. It's a little empty sometimes, right? Because you see these personalities and these great ideas, but chances are the people watching that are not the people who need that. Um, the people who need that are not the ones watching it, because they are in this bulletproof mentality. So my question is, do you think that why do you think it's absent, right? In the everyday, right? Do you chalk it up to generations? Do you chalk it up to miscommunication? Is it a societal shift? People are doing things more on their own. They're not talking to each other. What do you think it is? That's totally loaded, leading question. I didn't mean
Yeah,
it to
yeah, yeah.
be.
No, it's a great question. It's a central and important question. On the radio show we do, we just recently, in the last couple of weeks, interviewed Pat Williams, who was the former senior VP for the Orlando Magic for like 1,000 years, and he wrote this terrific book called Revolutionary Leadership, and it talks about some of the kind of the marquee names and a whole bunch of the lesser known folks who were leaders, men and women, during the Revolutionary War and during that era. And in the book, he talks about this exact same thing. Is like, we have a crisis of leadership. There's a lack of leadership helping propel organizations and businesses forward. As to the why of that, it's a multi-headed thing. I think part of it goes back to what we talked about of not good communication about what a leader is and who can be a leader. And we talk about there's a picture that somebody has of being a leader. And I know for me, for like if I'm writing something or directing something, I look at the people I really love who are really good, and I look at mine as different. Now, on a certain level, be like, hey, whatever you're making does need to be better. It does need to strive for excellence. But there's different types of excellence. I mean, Picasso doesn't look like anything like Rembrandt.
Mm.
Doesn't look like anything like Jackson Pollock, or even a better, more maybe more pertinent way. Who's a great singer? Bob Dylan is considered by a lot of folks to be a great singer. So is Sinatra. So is
Mm.
Elvis. These are wildly different styles.
Right.
You can be good and it look and sound very, very different. So just because you look at a fill in the blank, the biggest, most uh, gregarious leader that you're like, oh, I'm not like that. That's okay.
Right.
That's the Elvis leader. You might be, the Leonard Cohen leader. We need all types.
Right.
And again, if somebody is more of an introvert versus an extrovert, if somebody is very soft spoken, you can still be the leader. So as far as you know the dearth of leadership that we see, I think that has to be a starting point of redefining and understanding what a leader really is and how and where you can start that.
Yeah, I love the way you put that with music or art. I think they both fly. I mean, look, some people are football people, some people are basketball people. They have nothing to do with one another, unless you're Aaron Rodgers, apparently. But no, it's so important to highlight this, right? Because if you read these books that everyone and their mother's reading, a lot of them say the same thing, right? You have to be X, Y, and Z, or you're not a leader, right? And some of them shift a little bit, but if you're the kid who's like, well, I read this book and I read this book and I read this book and none of them apply to me, that's okay. Maybe you're going to write the next book, right? Maybe you're going to write the book that applies to you. And I think it's so important to, I think in this world, we're so fast to say, you're not going to do it because, and I had this conversation earlier with someone else who was like, your plan B. You don't need a plan B if you're so hell bent on plan A, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the fact that we tell artists, musicians, leaders, whoever, well, make sure you have a plan B, right? If your style of leadership doesn't work, make sure you kind of can default to someone who we all know and accept as a leader. That's not how it should be.
Yeah. No, I think that honestly, the truest test of leadership is to lead among peers. Leadership starts wherever you are. So let's say you're in school, you're in high school, and you're like, hey, a group of 5 people. You need a leader. Nobody's like the boss in the group, but somebody needs to push forward and draw out the best from everybody. I think it's like, if you're in a car full of people, does it mean only the driver knows how to drive?
True.
In a perfect world, if you're leading a team, each one of those people is a capable leader. Now, maybe they're not going to, at that given moment, be at the front of the pack, but they, at the very least, know what it's like to be in the leader's position and can be empathetic towards that and be collaborative. I think leadership has to start where you are, and the mentality has to be not, I want to be in charge, not, I want to know what it feels like to have power. I think great leadership starts with, I think I can serve this group of people by stepping into this role. Follow that. I don't think you're going to go wrong.
Yeah, that's a great example with the car, because, lots of things that resonate with different people. And maybe someone's thinking, who's watching is thinking, but I'm like the only leader among my friends. Like most of them are a little more passive. And it's like, okay, well, let's roll back that bulletproofness, I guess, or that's not the word, but whatever it is, and reflect just a little and say, using the car analogy, maybe I'm the leader right now, or in this type of event. Like for my group of friends, if we need tickets to a game, I'm the one who handles it because that's where my connections are. But I don't ever want to plan the tailgate, ever. Right? So someone else can take the lead on that. Who's picking the music? Surely not me. We'd listen to nothing but country and Britney Spears. So, I mean, there's so many different roles in life, but then also that leadership can work its way into.
Right. And in those moments, you know where your strengths and your weaknesses lie. And when it comes to planning the food, you're not like, oh, I don't feel slighted because, I wasn't picked to be the picnic leader. You're like, good. You know what? Billy, you're great. Don't forget the pimento cheese. But yes, you rock that. I'm going to support you. I'll lead on this other stuff. When you take your ego out of the thing, everything gets so much better. The guy I work with right now, work for Steve Brown, very accomplished author and speaker. His mentor was a success guru named Fred Smith. He would consult with all these major companies. Actually, here. There's Breakfast with Fred, worth checking out. Okay.
All right.
So, not a paid endorsement. And he once asked him, how do you go into these businesses and kind of find out what's wrong and how to help streamline and fix these problems? And it's paraphrasing. It was, I look for the ego. I look for where the ego is operating, and I follow that, and I find where the problems are all stemming from. So let's just freaking circle around that. Let's not make that a problem to fix. Let's just not think less of ourselves, but think of ourselves less.
Oh, interesting. So let's play that out, right? I'm a kid. I'm not a kid. I'm a entry level. I'm a middle management. I've been in my industry 5 years. I'm watching this video and Matthew, that sounds great. Sure. except the ego is coming from my boss's boss, and I hate him, and my boss hates him, and I'm a leader, and my boss is a leader, but now neither of us can lead because this one's ego. How do we navigate that?
It's a great question. And for me, it is not a hypothetical situation. I have been in a position in an organization where I am aggressively, is not too strong a word, saying, look at this idea. I think we should go here. But at the same time, if there's a better idea, let's talk about it. Let's kick holes in this. Not from an ego kind of view, but certainly really straining on the reins of like, guys, if my plan towards this destination isn't right, that's cool, but we got to go to this destination.
Right.
And I backed into butting heads with my direct report. Did not mean to do that. Lack of experience in reading the room, working remotely, just kind of not realizing how my communication is landing. Well intended as it was, what matters is where it lands with somebody else.
Sure.
So if you're communicating something and it's not working, hey, the onus is on the communicator. So I was not kind of calibrating that correctly. And in the end, I mean, it really got to a point of stopping just short of, let's do this or please fire me, because I believe in it that much. It worked out really well, but I will say there was an interim of a couple years that were a year and a half, let's say, really rough. A lot of wear and tear on me personally. And I think I brought that a lot on myself in just how I was communicating. By all means, like I said, vision is important, but not just your vision, their vision as well.
Right.
There's just to champion your own stuff, climb your own mountain and shout. That's not the art. The art lies in seeing what the company or the boss's vision are, where you see we need to go, trying to find some of that overlap, trying to find a way where you create the win-win. When we talked previously, I talked about the great negotiating book, classic book from the early 80s called Getting to Yes. And the pivotal parable that they shared was the story of two sisters arguing over an orange. Like, who argues over an orange?
Right.
except in a parable. And so what's the most equitable outcome? Obviously, it's to cut the orange in half and each walks away with half. It couldn't get any more fair than that. But the point is, actually, one of the sisters wanted the outside skin to make candy. The other wanted the inside to eat. So literally, had they gone beyond the positional fighting to get to the underlying interests, each one of them could walk away with 100% of what they wanted. I think a lot of times we default and sell ourselves short by just digging in our heels on a particular position, when the real work lies in putting your ego aside, trying to understand before being understood, to steal from 7 Habits. Understand what they're going for and where they are and what their needs are, and not at the exclusion of yours, but try to find the alignment however possible in a way that's not creating unnecessary friction. And in the end, all of that said, you may get to a point where you're like, this does not seem to be working. And that's okay. How many success stories start with somebody getting fired or quitting from a place that was not? It's okay. It's not easy, but I don't have to tell you that, to get to where you want to go, it ain't going to be easy no matter what.
Right. Yeah. It's always interesting when people portray as if they've just gotten to their spot so easily, right? Everything just came natural. I just got lucky. It's like, I'm a firm believer of the harder you work, the luckier you get. Right. And I think
Amen.
100%. And, I think sometimes too, people So going back to your orange example, sometimes it takes kind of a blow up of egos to get to a phenomenal resolution, right? I mean, I've been in situations where when I was in grad school, I went toe to toe, like almost a physical fight with someone, which was so out of character for both of us, but it just got so tense and so heated on, of course, a group project. And it turned out I was like, whoa, wait. Because the truth, the uncandy coded feelings come out when it's that high. And we're like, whoa, wait, what'd you just say? That's brilliant. Why didn't you say that before? Well, what? And you're okay with it? Of course, I'm okay with it. That's a great idea. But in this attempt to skirt people's feelings and be diplomatic, like sometimes you just need to throw it out there. But I think the leader in the group or in life can, to use your words, read the room, use the experience, and get there in a more, let's call it, a less combative way.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value in what you just said. That reminds me of when I was right before we got married 19 years ago. There's all these little marriage seminars and classes and books and everything, and one of them essentially says you're gonna fight fair, meaning be direct about what's on your heart, but not in a way that devalues the other person or no ad hominem attacks. That's
right.
Get to the, as best you can, get to the heart of what the thing is about, and don't rely on the crutch of, oh, you just don't get it, walk away, or it turns into a personal attack. That just makes a hard problem worse. But what you said, that's it. That's like the gold standard of like, I care about this. I care about this enough to have a hard conversation.
Right.
And if two people care enough about having a hard conversation, I think a resolution is probably on the other side of that somewhere.
Right. Yeah. And I think it comes down to, I mean, how many people have you ever met who were like, look, I really don't want the truth. I really just want you to sugarcoat it and tell me what I want to hear. Like in real things that matter. How does these pants make me look fat? No, do not tell me the truth. Right? Fine. But in things that matter and things that are super important or at least of a business sense, have you ever met anyone who was like, lie to me without giving that disclaimer? Right.
Right.
No one is like that. So if you think about it from an empathetic standpoint of understanding what the other person might be feeling, or even the do unto others, right? Treat you as you want to be treated. It's like, I want you to tell me the truth. So why am I so hesitant to tell you the truth? Be it, and I say the truth, and that's, here's my idea, here's it in clear terms, whatever it is.
Right.
Why dance around it? Just, here's what I think. You don't like it, fine. Right. But let's cross that bridge sooner than later. I don't want to deal with it later.
Yeah, and that's the real trick, is to not only to clearly communicate what you want and what you need and what your idea is, but to frame it in a way that is specific to that person. And you being clear in your own mind is great. That's half of it, but that's certainly not the whole picture. Right. I could be the most eloquent person in the world, and if I talk to somebody who only speaks Portuguese, I failed. Yeah. It doesn't matter how smart I think I am. I've got to code my message in a way that is going to land with them. That's what directing is. When you direct actors, sometimes they need deep motivation and what does this person think right now, and what is this, and get really inside. There's times where you just like, I need you to step here and say it a little bit more, loudly and angrily here. Got it. That's leadership. That's directing, is starting with understanding, how does this person communicate? Again, the onus of being understood is always on the communicator. So how do I speak to where this person is, and how do I get what I need from them without them changing who they are being a requisite? That's huge. And I'll tell you, I'll be completely honest. That's something I've learned a lot more about in the last like year and year and a half
Yeah.
of this person is this way. Okay. They're 40 years old. I'm not going to change who they are,
Right.
but I still need them to do something. So how do I incentivize, motivate, communicate what I need them to do in a way that is not predicated on them changing their personality overnight?
Right.
That's a big difference maker.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I've been, acknowledged as having to explain things 3 different times in 3 different ways, right? And we did it naturally before, right? You used art art and then music, and then I threw in sports. The 3 of those together said the same exact thing, right? But the music will resonate with someone, the art will resonate with someone else, the sports will resonate with the third grouping. And I think that it's really important as a leader to have some of those other descriptors in your back pocket, because if you say to whatever actor, I need you to really think, maybe you don't know them that well, really need you to think about what this person's feeling. And they're like, I have no idea what they're feeling. All right, so what would you be feeling if you were there? Well, I have no idea. Okay, can you step to the side and say it louder? Perfect, good, right? So again, to your point, it is the communicator. It makes me think of that T-Mobile commercial, right? Of the funniest one, and of course I'll default to sports, was the one after the Super Bowl with Tom Brady and Gronk, where it was like, here's what he said, but here's what he heard because of a bad connection, right? And how many times do we do that? And the most recent one is the woman dressing in a costume for a very not costume party business dinner. I love stuff like that, because it just makes you think like, oh my God, like that is, oh, that's so clear. I know exactly what problem you're solving now. I see exactly what you mean.
And the thing is, we will work on becoming more clear communicators and empathetic communicators the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, what could kind of ease that? And I think you touched on it earlier, that idea of do unto others as you would have done unto you. What we would all say, we need to show grace and patience to others. It's the grease in the machinery. It's not just being nice, it is tactical. I promise that being empathetic is a tactical quality. But also at the same time, hey, be patient and show yourself some grace as well, because you're learning, you're refining your game. And if that kind of starts getting reciprocated, well, that's a fantastic ecosystem for people to get better and communicate well.
I love that. I mean, how many people do you know who are so hard on themselves? And by any other standards, they don't even hold other people to that standard. But for some reason, they're that level up, which is noble, I guess, but at the expense of what? Right?
Right. I mean, and I get it. I mean, yeah, I'm not throwing rocks at those. That's me so many times.
Yeah.
But if you understand, going back to, the idea of progressively, iteratively getting better, it's not like you ever arrive.
Right.
You can certainly get to a new stage, a new phase, but you're always getting better. So give yourself permission to continually get better. I mean, has anybody ever achieved? I mean, like, what is the appeal of golf? It's a sport that you can never get to the end of,
right?
And it's maddening. And just when you're ready to throw the clubs in the water, you hit some shot, and you're like, my gosh, I am a genius. This is amazing. It's enough to
and we've all been there in the golf course.
Yes.
I'm amazing. I'm signing up for the tour.
in the heat of when you just, the self-flagellation, it's like, take a breath.
Right.
Figure out what you learned today through this and get on with it. Nobody's perfect. Stop having the ego that you should be perfect by now. Come on, get over yourself. Me, get over myself.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I love when you talked about this aspect of leadership that you just recently learned, right? And you've just recently started applying. I use that kind of example with some people. I work with some marketing clients who are maybe a little bit older, not quite as tech savvy, and older in that sense is literally like my age, because I'm not on TikTok or whatever. So no, pass. I draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I went far, and I went to Insta. I'm like, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. I did
everybody.
Snap for like a day when it was still Snapchat, like 100 years ago. Um, well, but what I tell them is, because what's the first thing you do? How to write a marketing, not me, but whoever, right? Before you go to a marketing professional, how to write a marketing plan. And you're like, oh, well, consider this, and blogging and content and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and blah, blah, all the way down the list. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this by myself, or I can't do this at all. And I say to them, I'm like, pick one, start with one, get comfortable with it, then add on another one. Like, you going all in from day one is not going to yield you what you think it will, because you're not going to be good at any of it. So at least get close. Same with leadership. Start reading the room. When you're good at reading the room, start speaking out your point of view. Then start doing this. Then start doing this. And even don't do it in a public venue first. Go to your boss and say, hey, I was thinking about this. Would that have been appropriate? We're so afraid to have a question these days.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we all want a mentor. That's what you're supposed to do. But you got to be a good mentee, right? If I come to you and never ask you questions like, teach me, Yoda. And he's like, well, try it, you must. You're like, well, wait, what? Like, so I mean, I think people don't get this. Communication is a bigger deal than anyone wants to let on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think communication is key. We've heard that enough times where you're like, yeah, right. Like, what else? You're like, let's just circle back to that,
Right.
and let's just not breeze past that, because I think if we drill into that, it actually is going to unlock a lot for us. And I continue to go back to the idea of mastering people skills, what would be considered, I guess, soft skills. And I don't know if there's baggage attached to that or not. That really is the skills that will open all the doors for you. The technical stuff is stuff that you can learn over the weekend, or jump online and learn that. And guess what? Next week it's going to change. So you're going to have to learn it again, which is fine. You stay agile.
Right.
But that people skills, developing empathy, learning to be direct and assertive without being abrasive or abusive, that part where it enters an art form, that's going to carry you through every job you ever have, through every relationship you ever have.
Mm-hmm.
That's where to invest your time and heart and effort.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I was very lucky to have been brought up by an Italian and German Long Island set of parents. We mastered small talk since I could talk. I was speaking small talk. But not too long ago, I was announcing out at an FIU beach volleyball event, and I'm a public address announcer. And I was sitting next to an intern who was on her phone the whole time. And, in this weird mixed millennial, geriatric millennial on the cusp of Gen X, I guess, whatever, Gen Z, I don't even know which one anymore. And I was just trying to make small talk. And she looked at me as if I had shot her puppy, in that I took any attention away from her phone. And she's like, she answered my, she's like, good. And right back to her phone, I was like, cool, good chat. Now back, it was right back to it. It was so disappointing. But building that rapport, right, with anyone, being able to build that rapport with anybody is a huge skill, in my opinion. You can't be a leader without being able to talk to anyone I throw in front of you.
Yeah, and exactly. And the idea of being able to build a rapport, have the small talk conversation, for somebody who throws the ball back exactly, look, that's an entry level. That's almost anybody could do that. When you interact with somebody who's different from you, now that's where it gets real, and that's where the skills really come in. Because, and I know I've had this with people. I'm kind of more in your vein of like, outgoing, And, when I have a conversation, you throw the ball to somebody and they don't throw it back. You're like, okay. Now I'm questioning myself. Did I offend them? Did I do whatever?
Right.
It's like, not necessarily. You might just have to work a little harder to decode what their approach is
Right.
and find the point of entry for them. It might not be well lit and well marked like it would be like for us, who we can just talk for an hour and probably talk for 3 hours.
True.
So like when you have that point of communication with a coworker or a stranger, like, okay, it's not going to be easy. That's okay. That might be okay that it's not natural and easy.
Right.
I might end up learning something and becoming better at communicating for this effort.
True. And I'll tell you, look, you don't have to be friends with everybody either. Right. So, I mean, you just said, I automatically start thinking, oh, was it me? Was it me? Maybe it was them, and that's okay too. Right. I saw this pin on Pinterest. I was killing 100 hours of time. And it said something like, don't expect everyone to like you. You don't like everybody. Like, duh.
Yeah.
Right? These moments you're like, why is this a meme? And you're like, well, except that now I just told you about it and you tell 2 people and you tell 2 people. It's just like so simplistic. You're just like, I feel like a moron. Of course I don't have to like everyone and no one has to like me. It's okay.
I think that's freeing. Yeah, absolutely. I worked leading the digital division of an agency that at some point had something like worldwide, like 650 people. And like in one building, it's probably 400 of them. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to go out for a beer after work with every single one of these people. In fact, if I were to look, and I never did, I'd probably find somebody that our personalities don't.
Right.
It's okay.
Right.
But in that scenario, if that's somebody I have to regularly interact with, well, then you've got a little project to figure out. How am I going to relate and interact with this person that gets things done, does not create acrimony or tension, but also I don't feel compelled to become, best friends with this person. There's, like you said, there's a middle ground where functionally we have to communicate.
Right.
Okay. How do we do that? And I think when you commit yourself to being a communication learner, you certainly set the table for that to happen.
Yeah. I think the more people observe and see how other people are and forego the assumptions, I think that's super important. And I'll tell you too, it also helps to have a code that you live by, right? Like you said, functionally, I have to work with you, but that doesn't mean you necessarily have to make some life-altering change, or literally change. Just don't be a jerk. Don't go through the day being a jerk to anyone, and you'll never really offend anyone, no one that matters, at least, right? So, to your microcosm of the world, I guess. But yeah, I feel like it goes back to these like assumptions and this self-consciousness and or lack thereof in my case. Apparently I'm fading fast. I need some coffee. But I mean, it's so simple to not be a jerk that if you're not a jerk, you can probably get along with anyone at the functional level.
So probably my most favorite point of communication moment I've ever had. We were shooting a documentary in Russia, and you won't find this surprising. I don't speak Russian. I don't speak any other languages other than English. But in the time that we were there, I tried to pick up more phrases, and so this hotel where we were staying, before we ever headed out on a shoot, there's kind of like this guard there that you pass by, and this is generalizing. They're not an emotive people. It's kind of stoic, kind of dialed in. That's okay. It's a cultural thing. There's no judgment there whatsoever. But whenever I would go by, I would try out I say, "Меня зовут, как вас зовут?" I'm sorry, "Меня зовут Matthew, как вас зовут?" My name is Matthew. What is your name? Or, whatever. Whatever greeting would be appropriate. I'm sure I murdered the language. I'm sure it was not stellar. But one of the last days we were there, we were on our way out, and he goes, "Hey," gets my attention somehow. he doesn't speak English. Okay. I don't speak Russian. He reaches under this desk and hands me an orange. And I'm like, what? He goes, like, for me? Yeah. I'm like, spasibo. Thank you. It was amazing. I mean, I did never learn Russian. We never had a real exchange. We
Right.
didn't learn like basic English, and I learned basic Russian, and we had some exchange. And yet the communication was there, wasn't it? Because it was not in what I was saying. It was in the effort. It was in the nonverbal.
Right.
I'm basically saying in a universal way, thanks for being here. We're really happy to be here. Thank you for your hospitality. Thanks for watching over us, keeping us safe. I think in my backwards, clumsy American way, all of that was still communicated.
Yeah.
And he gave me the orange, and I could say thank you in Russian. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that worked. I can't believe it. It was an amazing feeling. And I think if two cultures could be bridged, not through excellence, eloquence, just in effort and intention, I think the same thing could happen between different personality types.
Yeah. Wow. I agree. I love that. That is a great anecdote. I think we could go on another hour just about body language and intention. But we are coming close on time. So before we do, I want to close out with 5 random questions that have nothing to do with what we've talked about. You ready for them? Don't think too long. These are meant to be fun.
Try.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Okay.
Coke Zero.
Ooh. Blue jeans or khakis?
Blue jeans.
That's a good answer.
Please. Yes.
If you could go anywhere in the world tonight, where would you go for free?
Go somewhere in like Japan or an Asian country where there was no extant tether to Western culture or any kind of language at all. Fully immersed in a place that I don't have any working connection to.
Okay.
Purely for the challenge of that.
Do you have any pets?
4 kids and 4 cats. So
Pop quiz. Name them all.
I can totally name them. You have Jax, Kensley, Emmeline, and Asher. Those are the kids.
I was gonna say, ooh.
And
the cats' names are like Steve, Bob.
Yeah, Tesla,
nice.
Royce, Beamer, and you got me.
Come on, it's got to be a car name.
It is a car name. It's Tesla, Royce, Beamer, and Bentley. Don't tell my wife it took me that long to get the cats' names.
It's fine if you had to stumble on the cats. At least you got the kids right.
I got the kids. Don't ask birthdays. I'm gonna really
No, never. And then finally, what is your dream car? Since you obviously named all of your cats after cars.
Dream car. That's a great question. You know, I really like the mid 70s Broncos. It just, like big tires. There's no top on them. It just looks like a great beach day waiting to happen. It's just like a big slab. You're like, that car looks like you couldn't have a bad day behind that wheel.
Oh, nice. I love that. I fell victim to advertising the other day and built my dream Corvette, which I'm a Chevy girl. Oh my God. I'll have to send you the photos, but that car, the new C8, the new mid-body.
The new Corvettes look hot. I
like.
There's a couple of years, just a few years ago, they had a certain design. I'm like, I'm not
it
feeling
was
a little soft, a little. I mean, I like the new one. It recalls to mind for me like the Stingray era.
That's what they are. They're Stingrays. Yeah.
I look at the Stingrays. I'm like, I had little Hot Wheels. That was probably the first car as a baby, as a little kid, going like, okay, that I like that. I can't drive. I can't even tie my own shoes, but that's hot.
But I want that. Yeah, I mean,
want that.
I got to tell you, I drive a Camaro, which I love, but I was looking at that Corvette. I had to like wipe the drool off my desk. So it was, and oddly affordable. I mean, compared to what you'd expect them, not affordable, oddly less expensive than you'd expect them to be. I mean, I built like a top of the line for, it's going to sound so snooty, but a top of the line for like 75 grand. I expected it to be well over 100.
Listen, this is the goal. This is just put it on the board.
That is a vision board right there. There we go.
That's it. Let's do this, Jessica.
All right. Well, Matthew Porter, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was so much fun. I'm sure we'll be doing another chat like this. Maybe we'll bring in a third person or whatever. What are you working on? What should people contact you for? I mean, are you casting? Are you looking to do X, Y, or Z? Should people contact you at all? And if yes, why? Get off my lawn.
Sure. Get off my lawn. So 2 websites. The kind of stuff we're talking about here is very much what we talk about at heyporter.com. We talk about creative leadership, productivity, marketing, and decoding success. This is just where like, hey, this is something I learned, or this is something I heard from somebody else. Here's this. So that's a cool little point of being able to interact with people at heyporter.com. And then marketing agency is heyporter.media. And, I've worked with, I've had leadership positions in small agencies of like 40 to 50 people, 600 to 700 people. I like the approach we're taking here, which is very small, very agile, can put together the team that's specific to a client's needs. And we've been doing some cool stuff with some startup companies and different organizations. And if anybody needs that kind of assistance, we're here to serve you.
Great. Very cool. And I'll go ahead and I'll put all that information, all the links and everything in the write-up that'll accompany this video. But yes, again, thank you so much. I'm sure anyone watching has their own thoughts and opinions. Feel free to put it in the comments. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you again, Matthew, and have a great day, everybody.